She wasn't ready. Not for this, not for the tiny ring in a tiny hand, and definitely not for the eyes watching from behind. This was the moment that would change her life forever. Aisha had always lived a quiet, simple life. Every day after her college classes, she waited near the school gate for her bus. She wasn't someone who liked crowds or loud places. She loved these few minutes of peace, earphones in, soft music playing, the world fading away. But today, something different was in the air. Something unexpected. The school gate burst open as dozens of children ran out, laughing, shouting, swinging their bags around. Aisha smiled to herself. She always found comfort in watching their innocence, their excitement, their tiny joys. She took a slow breath, enjoying the warm sunlight on her face, when suddenly a small shadow stopped right in front of her. Aisha blinked and looked down. There he was, a little boy, maybe 6 years old, cute cheeks, messy brown hair, wearing a blue hoodie with a tiny cartoon bear on it. He stared at her as if she was the only person in the world. Aisha removed her headphones slowly. "Yes, sweetheart?" she asked gently. Instead of answering, the boy took something out of his pocket with great ceremony, as if he was revealing a treasure. A tiny plastic ring, pink, glittery, probably from a toy store. He held it up proudly, cleared his little throat, and said the words that made Aisha freeze. "Auntie, will you marry me?" For a moment, Aisha just stared. Was this real? Was someone pranking her? Was this child serious? Her heart melted instantly. His eyes were big and honest, no shyness, no hesitation, just pure innocence. Aisha crouched down, placing her bag on the ground. "Oh my! Marriage?" she whispered, trying not to laugh. The boy nodded. "Yes, I like you. You look like a princess." Aisha felt her cheeks warm. "A princess, me?" He nodded again, more confidently this time. "Princesses are pretty. You're pretty. So I want to marry you." Aisha couldn't control her smile. This was the most adorable thing anyone had ever said to her. She gently touched the plastic ring. "What's your name, sweet boy?" "Abir," he replied, puffing his chest proudly. "And why do you want to marry me, Abir?" He thought for a second, very seriously, then said, "So we can be happy." Aisha's heart softened like warm wax. Such a small child, yet such pure words. She slowly took the ring and pretended to put it on her finger. "Oh no," she gasped dramatically. "It fits perfectly. What do we do now?" Abir's entire face lit up like a festival. "That means you said yes," he declared. Aisha laughed loudly, the kind of laugh that comes from deep inside the soul. But right in that beautiful moment, something changed. She suddenly felt watched. A strange heaviness lingered in the air. Aisha looked up slowly, not at the children, not at the gate, not at the cars passing by, but toward the parking area, and that's when her smile faded. Standing beside a black SUV, arms folded, eyes sharp, expression unreadable, was a tall man watching everything. He wasn't amused, he wasn't laughing, he wasn't even smiling. He was simply staring. At her, at his son, at the ring in her hand. Aisha stood up quickly, nervousness prickling her skin. The little boy noticed nothing. He was too busy grinning, but she sensed it instantly. This wasn't just a cute moment anymore, this was something else, something she didn't understand yet. The man began walking toward them. Slow, steady steps. Every inch of him radiated authority. His suit suggested power, his posture suggested discipline, his eyes suggested protectiveness. Aisha swallowed. Was he angry? Was he offended? So was he judging her? Her heart raced as he got closer. The boy tugged Aisha's dupatta. "Princess Auntie, that's my papa." Papa. So this was the father. Aisha stepped back slightly, embarrassed. She didn't know what to say. Should she explain herself? Should she apologize? The man stopped right in front of them. Up close, he looked even more intimidating. A strong jawline, trimmed beard, and eyes that hid a storm of emotions. Aisha's heartbeat thudded in her ears. He looked at the plastic ring in her hand, then at his son, then back at her. For a moment no one spoke, just the wind, just the distant laughter of children, just the strange, uncertain tension between three people who were meeting for the first time. In the strangest way possible, And before anyone said a single word, Aisha understood something. This small proposal wasn't going to end here. This moment, this unexpected innocent moment, was about to change all of their lives. Aisha was still holding the tiny plastic ring when the man approached, each step calm, controlled, and heavy with unspoken authority. She had seen strict fathers before, protective ones too, but something about him felt different, serious, sharp, watchful. The little boy, completely unaware of the tension, ran straight toward him. "Papa!" His father's arms opened instantly, catching him mid-jump. The cold expression he carried softened just slightly as he held his son close. Aisha noticed the shift, the way his jaw relaxed, the way his eyes warmed for a moment. It told her one thing. This man loved his child more than anything in the world, but then his eyes returned to her. Aisha grew stiff again. He didn't speak at first. He simply looked at the ring in her hand, then at his son, then back at her, like he was analyzing every angle of the moment. "Papa," Abir said happily, "I proposed to her." His father raised an eyebrow slowly. "Oh, you did?" The boy nodded proudly. "She said yes. Look, the ring is on her finger." Aisha's cheeks burned. She quickly slipped the tiny ring off. I didn't exactly say yes," she said quickly, embarrassed. "It was just a sweet gesture. Kids do things like this." His father kept his gaze steady. "And you are?" "Oh, I'm Aisha. I study at the college nearby. I was just waiting for my bus." He didn't interrupt. He didn't smile, just watched her. "I'm really sorry if it looked inappropriate," Aisha continued nervously. "I didn't want him to misunderstand anything." Finally, the man spoke, his voice deep, calm, and firm. "Cute for whom?" The sudden directness made her blink. I just meant it was harmless. He's just a kid." His eyes narrowed, not angrily, but protectively. "Kids are trusting," he said. "Too trusting. They attach easily, especially mine." Aisha felt the weight of his words. There was something personal hidden beneath them. Before she could respond, Abir tugged his father's chin. "Papa, she's my princess." The man exhaled sharply, embarrassed, maybe even frustrated, but he didn't scold his son. Instead, he placed him back on the ground gently. "Abir," he said softly, "you can't go around proposing to strangers." Abir crossed his arms dramatically. "But I like her." His father ran a hand over his face, as if he'd had this conversation 1,000 times in different versions. Aisha couldn't help smiling. "That's all right. He's adorable, really." For the first time, the man's expression shifted, not to a smile, but to something close, a momentary softness, a flicker of appreciation. "My son seems to think so," he murmured. Aisha noticed the exhaustion in his eyes, the kind that comes from carrying responsibilities alone, the kind that most people don't see. Trying to ease the tension, she said, "Well, he definitely knows how to brighten someone's day." Abir beamed. His father cleared his throat. "I'm Zayan," he said finally, extending a polite nod. "Zayan Malik." Aisha nodded back. "Nice to meet you." "Sir, no need for sir," he said simply. "Just Zayan." But even as he spoke normally, the distance in his tone remained. He wasn't rude, just guarded. Abir grabbed Aisha's dupatta again. "Princess Auntie, can we go now? Papa came early today." Zayan stared at his son with disbelief. "Abir, you don't call strangers—" "It's okay," Aisha interrupted gently. "He's just being sweet." Zayan shot her a look, halfway between gratitude and helpless apology. He lifted his son once more, settling him on his hip. "Say goodbye," he told the boy. Abir waved enthusiastically. "Bye, princess. Don't forget me." Aisha laughed, waving back. "How could I forget my prince?" Zayan paused for a moment before walking away. Aisha couldn't explain why, but she felt as if he wanted to say something more, yet held it back. At the SUV, Zayan buckled Abir in, but his eyes drifted toward her again. This time his gaze wasn't cold. It was thoughtful, curious, like he was trying to understand her, or trying to understand why his son connected to her instantly. Aisha pretended to look at her phone, but her heart thumped strangely. As they drove away, Abir pressed his face against the back window, waving at her until the car disappeared down the road. Aisha exhaled slowly. She didn't know why, but she felt shaken. She had met a little boy with a heart full of innocence. She had met a father with eyes full of walls. And she had no idea that both of them, in their own different ways, would soon enter her life again. Not by choice, not by accident, but by fate. Aisha stood frozen even after the SUV disappeared from sight. The tiny plastic ring still sat in her palm, warm from the little boy's hand. She didn't know why her heart felt so heavy, why her mind kept replaying that moment, why the father's eyes stayed with her long after he left. Maybe it was the innocence of a child. Maybe it was the loneliness behind a man's stare. Maybe it was something her heart had felt but her mind couldn't name. She shook her head, tucked the ring into her bag, and got onto her bus. But fate wasn't done with her, not even close. Aisha reached the school, gate again after her classes. Crowd, same noise, same chaos, but something inside her searched the faces of the children. She didn't want to admit it, but she was looking for him. For Abir. He didn't appear. A strange emptiness tugged at her chest, and she scolded herself internally. "Why am I thinking about a kid I just met?" she murmured. Yet, she knew the answer. His innocent proposal had carved a memory she couldn't shake off. But more than that, there was the father, that cold, guarded man. His eyes were unreadable, but his presence left an impression she couldn't forget. Just when she turned to leave, she heard a familiar voice from behind. "Auntie!" Her heart skipped. She turned around to see Abir running toward her, tiny feet, big smile. "Abir!" She gasped, smiling widely. "Oh, you're here." He crashed into her legs and hugged her tightly, as if she had been missing for years. "I was sick yesterday," he said with a pout. "I wanted to come, but Papa didn't let me." "Oh, sweetheart," she said softly, brushing his hair. "I'm glad you're better." Aisha felt something warm bloom in her chest, a strange affection she hadn't expected. She lifted him into her arms. "Did you miss me this much?" Abir nodded vigorously. "I told Papa you are my princess, and I will marry you when I grow up." Aisha laughed. "First grow tall, then we'll talk." As she set him down, another presence approached, silent, controlled. She didn't even need to look to know who it was. Zayan. This time, he wasn't cold, he wasn't intimidating, but he also wasn't comfortable. Just aware, very aware. He stopped in front of them, eyes flicking from his son to Aisha. "Abir, I told you not to run ahead." "But Papa?" "She was going to leave," the boy argued. Zayan exhaled sharply. "Aisha, I apologize again." "It's fine," she said quickly. "Hurriedly, he's just excited." Zayan's gaze lowered to his son's hand, gripping her dupatta tightly. "Abir gets attached easily," he said slowly. "Too easily." There it was again, that sadness in his voice. Aisha didn't understand it yet, but she felt it. Abir tugged his father's sleeve. "Papa," she said she missed me. Aisha blinked. I didn't say." Zayan raised an eyebrow, amused for the first time. A soft, almost invisible smile touched the corner of his lips. "Abir," he said. "Let the poor girl breathe." But Abir only snuggled closer to Aisha, and in that moment, something shifted. Zayan saw the ease between them, the comfort, the natural affection. He wasn't jealous, he wasn't upset, he was thoughtful. Before leaving, Abir insisted on giving Aisha something. He pulled a small paper from his backpack. Her drawing. 3 stick figures holding hands, one tall, one medium, one very tiny, a tiny heart above all 3. Aisha's breath caught. Abir. "Who are these?" she asked gently. "That's Papa. That's me. And that's you," he announced proudly. Aisha's heartbeat changed rhythm. Zayan froze behind him. It was just a child's drawing, but the meaning behind it wrapped around all 3 of them like a silent truth. Aisha crouched to look at him. "Eye to eye, it's beautiful," she whispered. Abir grinned, proudly. "Keep it forever." She nodded. Something in her chest tightened. As she stood up, her eyes met Zayan's, unexpectedly soft, vulnerable, even grateful. For the first time, he didn't look away. He spoke quietly. "I appreciate how you treat him." Aisha wasn't expecting those words. From this man, they meant more than she could understand. She smiled. "He's a wonderful kid." Zayan nodded, a small warmth in his gaze. A beer is all I have. The sentence lingered in the air like a confession he hadn't meant to reveal. Aisha felt the weight of his loneliness, the ache behind his strength. Before she could say anything, Abir grabbed both of their hands. Now we're all going home, he said cheerfully. Zayan shook his head with a soft chuckle. No, buddy. Auntie has her own home. Abir frowned, confused. Why can't she come with us? Aisha's face turned red. Zayan glanced away awkwardly. Because, he said, clearing his throat, Auntie has a life, and we shouldn't disturb her. Abir didn't like the answer, but Aisha smiled. It's okay. We'll meet again. When they finally turned to leave, Abir kept waving until she was completely out of sight. And even then, Zayan looked back one last time, not at the road, not at the traffic, but at her, as if something inside him whispered, "This is not the end. This is the beginning of something you didn't expect." That night, Aisha placed Abir's drawing on her study table. Far from the plastic ring, far from her books, far from everything else, because she didn't want anything to smudge, the little heart he had drawn above the 3 stick figures. She didn't know why it meant so much. She didn't know why her eyes kept drifting toward it. She didn't know why her heart felt strange and warm, full. Maybe because the drawing wasn't childish. It was hopeful, and hope is a dangerous thing, because once it enters your heart, it refuses to leave. Aisha reached her evening job at the small family cafe, the one filled with warm lights and the smell of cinnamon pastries. She tied her apron, fixed her ponytail, and stepped behind the counter. It was just another day, or so she thought. The bell above the cafe door chimed. She glanced up casually, and froze. She blinked, then blinked again. It was them, Abir bouncing with excitement, and behind him, Zayan. Aisha's breath caught in her chest. Auntie, Princess Auntie. Abir yelled as if he had discovered a hidden treasure. He ran to her and hugged her leg tightly, nearly knocking her off balance. Aisha's laughter burst out naturally. You again? Didn't we just meet a few days ago? Abir nodded rapidly. I told Papa I want hot chocolate only from your cafe. If you're not here, I don't want it. Aisha looked at Zayan, who stood a little awkwardly by the door, leaning back with his hands in his pockets. He cleared his throat. He refused to drink anything at home, so, we're here. There was something different about Zayan today. He wasn't the stern man she met at the school gate. His shoulders looked less tense. His eyes didn't feel cold. He looked human, tired but human. Welcome, she said softly. Abir tugged her apron. Make Papa coffee, make me hot chocolate, and sit with us. Zayan stepped forward immediately. Abir, she is working. Don't trouble her. Aisha bent down and ruffled the boy's hair. I'll make the drinks first. Then we'll see. Abir's smile lit up the whole cafe. Aisha placed their order on the table, steaming black coffee for Zayan, a creamy hot chocolate with whipped cream for Abir. Abir clapped happily. Thank you, Princess. Zayan gave a small apologetic smile. He insists on that nickname. Aisha shrugged, smiling back. Well, at least it's a nice one. Zayan let out a soft chuckle, the first she had heard from him. It felt genuine, warm, unexpected. Abir was busy licking chocolate from the cup edges, so Aisha turned to Zayan. So, you brought him because of the hot chocolate? Zayan hesitated, then shook his head. No, he said he wanted to see you. Aisha froze for a moment. Oh, don't take it personally, he added quickly. He just gets attached. Aisha noticed again the sadness in his tone, the heaviness in his eyes, the tired lines on his face. She wanted to ask why, but she didn't. Some questions hurt before they heal. As she stood near their table, refilling napkins, Zayan finally spoke again. Aisha, look, I should tell you something. She turned toward him slowly. My son lost his mother 2 years ago. Aisha's breath hitched. He was only 4. He doesn't remember much, but he remembers love. And losing it. Zayan's voice cracked, and only slightly, but enough for her heart to tremble. He holds on to anyone who makes him feel safe, Zayan continued. He sees you smile at him. And he thinks that's love. Aisha felt tears prick her eyes. Zayan, I'm so sorry. He stared into his coffee. He's lonely. Then and I try my best, but I'm not enough for him alone. Aisha didn't know what to say. She just felt an overwhelming softness in her chest. For both of them. The man who tried to look strong. The boy who tried to feel loved. And somehow, she had stepped in between them without even trying. Just as the conversation grew heavy, Abir jumped from his chair and held up a messy drawing he made on the cafe menu. 3 stick figures again. Bigger this time. He held it proudly in front of them. See? Papa, me and Princess Auntie. Zayan groaned softly, embarrassed. Abir. Not again. Aisha laughed, wiping a stray tear. It's okay, she said, looking at the drawing. Your son is precious. Zayan looked at her. Really looked. As if he was trying to understand why she was being so kind. Why she wasn't pushing them away. Why she didn't seem bothered by Abir's attachment. Most people avoided emotional kids. Most people avoided single parents. Most people avoided complicated lives. But Aisha, she didn't even flinch. After finishing the drinks, Abir insisted on giving Aisha a hug. Come again, she said softly, Abir whispered. Only if you promise to stay. Her throat tightened. Yes, she whispered back. So I'll stay. When she looked up, Zayan was standing near the door watching her, but this time he wasn't guarded. He wasn't distant. He wasn't cold. He simply nodded at her. A nod that said, thank you for seeing my son, for caring, for being gentle when the world wasn't. And when they walked out of the cafe, Aisha realized something. This was no longer an accidental connection. This was fate weaving 2 worlds together. Without asking permission. Aisha didn't know when it happened, or how. But the cafe slowly became more than just her workplace. It became a place she looked forward to, not because of the warm pastries, not because of the soft music, not because of the extra tips, but because of one tiny customer with the biggest smile, and a father who carried the weight of 2 lives on his shoulders. Every day, at almost the same time, the cafe bell chimed. And every day Aisha's heartbeat changed before she even turned around. Abir and Zayan had arrived, again. Abir would run to her with open arms. Auntie, Princess Auntie, I drew something for you. And behind him, always a few steps back, Zayan would walk in, steady, quiet, polite. At first, it was awkward. Aisha didn't know how to act around Zayan, and he didn't know how to act around her. Their conversations were short. How was your day? Busy. Abir behaved well today, and I can see that. But slowly, the distance between their words shrank. One day, Abir was coloring a drawing at the table while Aisha served pastries. Abir suddenly looked up and said loudly, Papa, you smile more when she's here. Zayan nearly choked on his coffee. Aisha froze with a plate in her hand. Zayan's ears turned red. Abir, that's not... But it's true, the boy insisted. You're happy. You don't look tired when Auntie is here. Aisha looked away quickly, trying to hide her blush. Zayan cleared his throat. Abir says things he doesn't. Understand, he muttered. But Aisha had already seen it, that unspoken truth behind his eyes. He did smile, or his face did relax, his voice did soften, not that because she did anything special, but because she didn't expect anything from him. Not perfection, not wealth, not strength, just presence. Sometimes that's all a lonely heart needs. One evening, the cafe was almost empty. A soft drizzle tapped against the windows, and warm lights glowed inside. Aisha delivered Abir's hot chocolate, extra whipped cream, just how he loved it. As she set it down, Abir took her hand and said softly, Auntie, can you be my friend forever? Aisha knelt beside him, brushing a crumb off his cheek. Forever is a big word, champ. But I want you, he whispered. And Papa likes you too. Zayan's head snapped up so fast he almost dropped his coffee. Abir, he scolded gently. Don't say things like that. Abir frowned, confused. But it's true. You look at her like you looked at Mama. The cafe fell silent. Even the sound of the rain felt heavy. Aisha's heart throbbed painfully. She knew children spoke without filters, but this was different. Zayan lowered his gaze. A shadow passed over his face. a mix of grief, guilt, and something that looked like fear. "Abir," he said quietly. "Aisha isn't your mother." "I know," the boy whispered back, "but she could be." Aisha's breath caught. Zayan closed his eyes for a moment, as if trying to hold himself together. She sat across from them, placing her hands on the table. "Abir." "Come here," she said softly. He climbed into her lap instantly. She hugged him gently, rubbing his back. "Your mama must have been a wonderful woman," she said. Abir nodded. "She was beautiful. Like you." Aisha smiled through the lump in her throat. "I can be your friend, always, but some things take time." Abir nodded slowly, his head resting on her chest. Zayan watched them, his son curled into her arms, Aisha holding him with a tenderness he hadn't seen in years. Something warm cracked open inside him. Not desire, not romance, but hope. The kind he had buried a long time ago, when Abir finally ran off to look at the pastry display. Aisha felt Zayan's eyes on her. She turned toward him. He didn't look away this time. His voice was softer than she had ever heard. "You're patient with him," he said. "He gets attached too fast. Most people avoid him." Aisha frowned. "Why would anyone avoid him?" "He's a blessing." Zayan exhaled slowly. "Because loving a child like him isn't easy. He remembers small kindnesses and turns them into bonds. I'm scared he'll get hurt if someone he trusts walks away." His voice cracked again, almost invisible. But Aisha heard it. Before she could respond, he added quietly, "I'm scared I'll get hurt too." Aisha's lips parted slightly. For a man who carried so much silence, those words were a confession of the deepest kind. Aisha didn't touch his hand. She didn't say anything dramatic. She simply whispered, "I won't hurt him." Zayan's eyes softened with something like relief and something like fear, because promises that sound true hurt the most if broken. Before leaving, Abir returned holding 2 pastries, one for him, one for Aisha. "Auntie, I made a wish," he whispered. "What wish?" "That one day we will all live together." Aisha's breath stopped. Zayan froze at the door. Abir grinned innocently. "You, Papa, and me, like a family." A silence filled the room, not awkward, but meaningful. Aisha didn't promise, she didn't deny, she simply kissed Abir's forehead. "Let's see what destiny decides, Abir nodded happily. Zayan watched her, and for the first time, he didn't hide the emotion in his eyes. Something had begun, something small, something fragile, something that neither of them fully understood yet. But whatever it was, Abir felt it first, and children never lie about love. A week passed since Abir's innocent wish, yet its echo stayed with everyone. Aisha felt it every time she looked at the cafe door. Zayan felt it every time he tried not to look at Aisha, and Abir carried it with the pure certainty only children have. Something had shifted, softly, slowly, like the first breeze, before a storm you don't yet know is coming. It was a quiet Friday afternoon when the bell above the cafe door chimed again. Aisha looked up, instinctively, and there he was, Zayan. Not in his usual business attire, not rushed, not distracted. He wore simple clothes, a navy t-shirt, casual jeans, and a nervousness she had never seen in him before. Abir wasn't with him. For a moment, Aisha forgot how to breathe. He approached the counter slowly, his hands awkwardly tucked into his pockets. Aisha tried not to stare. "You're alone today?" she asked gently. Zayan nodded once. "Abir is at a play date." "Oh," she replied, a little disappointed even though she hid it well. "So, coffee?" "Yes," he said, then after a pause, "Actually, I came here to talk." Aisha blinked. "Talk?" The word felt heavier than it should. Zayan inhaled deeply, as if rehearsing something in his mind. He sat by the window. Aisha placed his coffee in front of him, then hesitated before taking the seat opposite him. For a moment, neither spoke. Outside, people hurried past. Inside, time felt slow, almost suspended. Finally, Zayan looked up. "I want to say thank you." Aisha frowned a little. "For what?" "For being kind to Abir and for being gentle with me." She smiled softly. "You don't have to thank me for that." "I do," he insisted. People don't usually stay after knowing I'm a single father. Aisha's heart tightened. Why not? He stared into his coffee. Because they think I come with responsibilities. Complications. Emotional damage. Aisha leaned forward. And you think they're wrong? He lifted his eyes to hers, eyes that held pain, but also a new kind of hope. I don't know, he whispered, but for the first time, I want to try again. He swallowed, and that scares me. Aisha felt her breath catch. Zayan, I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I just needed to say it out loud. His voice trembled, so slight, but impossible to miss. For a man like him, admitting fear was the greatest act of courage. Aisha softened. Does Abir talk about me a lot? She asked carefully. Zayan laughed, a small, tired, beautiful laugh. All the time. He draws you. He talks about how you listen to him. He said he wants to buy you a crown one day. Aisha chuckled. A crown? Why? Because he said, Princess Auntie needs a real crown. Papa. Her heart melted entirely. Then Zayan's expression shifted. He lost his mother very young, he said. Quietly. Sometimes I worry he's searching for pieces of her in someone else. Aisha reached across the table and gently touched his hand. He stiffened, not in discomfort, but in surprise. You're doing your best, she said. And he's not looking for a replacement. He's looking for love. Children feel love more than they understand it. Zayan looked down at their hands, then slowly relaxed. It was the first time they had touched. A simple moment, but powerful enough to change something between them. As the conversation continued, two staff members watched from the counter. Sarah whispered, They're cute together, aren't they? Ali nodded. Something is definitely happening. Aisha didn't realize Zayan didn't realize, but everyone else did. The space between them wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with something unspoken, warm, steady, growing. After almost an hour, Zayan stood up. I should go, he said softly. Aisha got up too. Walking him to the door, he hesitated before leaving. Can I ask you something? Yes. Would you join me in a beer at the park tomorrow? Only if you're comfortable. Her stomach fluttered. Yes, she whispered before she could overthink it. I'd like that. Zayan smiled. Not the polite smile she had seen before, not the tired corporate smile, a real smile, one that crinkled the corners of his eyes, one that softened the burden he carried, one that looked like a beginning. Thank you, he said quietly. When he walked away, Aisha felt something inside her shift. Hope, fear, confusion, warmth. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was the start of something beautiful, something unexpected, something neither of them had planned for. And while Aisha stood near the door, watching him disappear around the corner, she didn't know Abir had told Zayan something earlier that day. Papa, ask her to come with us. Maybe she's the missing part of our family. The next morning arrived with golden sunlight stretching across the city, the kind of morning that promised something special, even if no one said it aloud. Aisha woke earlier than usual, staring at her reflection. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her hair. Relax, she whispered to herself. It's just a day at the park. With a father, and his son, and feelings. She pressed her palm to her chest. Her heart was not listening. When she reached the park, she spotted them instantly. Abir was chasing butterflies, arms outstretched, giggles echoing across the grass, and Zayan. He stood a little apart, watching his son with the softest expression, but the moment he saw Aisha approaching, something in his eyes warmed, as if the morning became brighter simply because she arrived. Abir noticed her next. Auntie! He ran toward her full speed. Aisha laughed and knelt just in time to catch him. You came. He beamed. I promised I would. You look like a real princess today. Aisha glanced at Zayan, embarrassed. He looked away for a moment, as if admiring her too felt too obvious. They walked together through the park. Abir led the way, jumping, skipping, talking non-stop about his school, his drawings, his dreams. Aisha listened. Zayan watched. The sunlight slipped through the trees, dappling their path. Aisha noticed how Zayan stayed close to Abir. Shayet kept glancing at her, checking if she was comfortable. She appreciated that more than he knew. When they reached the lake, Abir tugged both their hands. "Sit here! Sit here!" he insisted, pointing to a wooden bench. Abir squeezed himself between them, one hand holding Aisha's, the other holding his father's. "Now we are a triangle," he declared proudly. Aisha burst into laughter. Zayan shook his head, smiling for real. "What does that even mean?" Zayan asked. "It means we are all connected," Abir said simply. Aisha's heart softened. Zayan's expression shifted, a quiet understanding passing between him and his son. Abir ran off toward the slide. Aisha watched him, then looked at Zayan. "He's such a joyful child," she said. "He gets it from his mother," Zayan replied softly. "Not from me." Aisha turned to him. "That's not true." He didn't respond, but she continued. "You're loving, caring, protective. Abir feels safe because of you." Zayan looked at her slowly, really looked at her. "No one has spoken to me like that in years," he said quietly. Aisha felt her chest tighten. "You deserve to hear it." A breeze passed, lifting her hair. She tucked it behind her ear. Zayan's eyes followed the motion, not with hunger, but with a longing he didn't dare show. A sudden cry broke the moment. Abir had missed a step on the slide ladder and slipped, falling onto the sand. Aisha reached him first. "Abir, sweetheart, are you okay?" His lower lip trembled. He wasn't badly hurt, just shocked. But children feel everything bigger than it is. Aisha held him tightly. He buried his face in her chest. Sniffling, Zayan reached them a second later, panic on his face. "Let me see," he said gently, checking his son's hands and knees. Just a small scrape. Nothing serious, but Abir clung to Aisha instead of him. "Auntie, don't let go." Aisha wrapped her arms around the crying boy, stroking his hair. "I'm right here," she whispered. Zayan paused. For a moment, he just watched them, his son in the safest place he had chosen, and Aisha holding him like he was her own. Something broke open in his chest, something old, something painful, something beautiful. After Abir calmed down, he stayed on Aisha's lap, leaning against her. Zayan sat beside them again, quieter than before. "I've never seen him attach this fast," he said. Aisha didn't answer immediately. Then she said softly, "Maybe he feels what you've tried so hard to hide." Zayan frowned. "What do you mean?" "You love deeply, Zayan, even if you protect it behind walls." He swallowed hard. "Aisha." His voice was low, almost trembling. "I don't know how to do this anymore." Her eyes softened. "You don't have to know. You only have to feel." His breath caught. Abir yawned loudly, interrupting the heavy moment. Aisha and Zayan laughed, tension melting like snow in sunlight. Zayan whispered, "He brings us together, doesn't he?" Aisha nodded. "Yes, he does." When it was time to leave, Abir held both their hands again, swinging between them with each step. "Can Auntie come again?" he pleaded. Aisha looked at Zayan. Zayan looked at her. This time, he didn't hide. "I'd like that," he said softly. Aisha smiled. "I'd like that too." Abir cheered. And in that moment, as their three shadows stretched across the grass, they looked like a family. Not official, not promised, but possible. A possibility that felt more real with each passing heartbeat. Something had begun. And now, none of them could pretend otherwise. The week after the park visit felt different, lighter, warmer, as if all three of them had stepped into a new chapter together. Abir woke up every day asking the same question. "Papa, can we see Auntie today?" Zayan would smile quietly, but inside he was terrified of how much he wanted the same thing. Aisha hid her growing feelings behind polite smiles, but her heart reacted every time she heard the cafe bell ring, hoping it was them, hoping he had come. But none of them expected what was coming next. Sometimes, destiny doesn't warn you before testing you. It was a Thursday evening, soft rain, dim lights, the cafe almost empty. Aisha was wiping the counter when she heard the familiar bell. She looked up, smiling automatically. Abir rushed in, soaked from the rain, his little hair sticking to his forehead. "Auntie," he squealed. Aisha hurried around the counter and bent down. "You're drenched, sweetheart." "What happened?" Before he could answer, Zayan entered, dripping wet, breathing heavily as if he'd been running. He looked worried, really worried. "Abir, I told you not to run ahead." But Abir interrupted him, grabbing Aisha's hand tightly. "Auntie, I need to show you something." She laughed softly but noticed something trembling in his voice. "What is it?" Abir reached into his small jacket pocket, pulled out something wrapped in a tissue, and opened it. Tiny silver ring, not expensive, not new. The kind sold at corner stalls for kids to play dress-up. But to Abir, it was treasure. He held it up with innocent pride. "Auntie, I want to marry you." Aisha froze completely. Her breath hitched, her eyes widened, her entire body went still. She looked at the tiny ring, then at the hopeful boy, and finally at Zayan. He stood behind Abir, chest rising fast, emotions colliding inside him. Shock. Fear, hurt, hope, everything at once. Aisha knelt slowly. "Abir," she whispered. "You can't marry me, sweetheart." Abir's face fell instantly. "But why? I love you. I want you with me and Papa forever." Zayan stepped forward quickly. "Abir, that's enough. Don't pressure her." Abir's eyes watered. "I'm not. I don't want her to leave us." Those words stabbed Aisha's heart. She hugged him tightly. "I'm not leaving you," she whispered, but her voice trembled, because she didn't know what the future held. Abir pulled back and placed the ring in her hand again. "Please, Auntie, please be mine." Aisha couldn't breathe, not because of the boy's innocence, but because she could feel Zayan's eyes on her, watching every reaction, every hesitation. Abir wanted a mother, but Zayan was a man with a broken past. One wrong move could shatter everything. She didn't want to hurt either of them, and that pressure froze her. After a long silence, Zayan came closer. His voice was calm, but his eyes were storming. "Abir, give her time. She wasn't expecting this, but I love her." Abir shouted, voice cracking. Aisha hugged him tighter. "Abir, love isn't a game. Marriage isn't a game." Abir suddenly pulled away from her, tears spilling. "You don't want us," he choked. Aisha felt her heart rip open. "That's not true." "Yes, it is," he cried. "You don't want to be with us." "That's why you froze. I saw your face." Aisha's lips parted, unable to speak. And that's when it happened. Zayan stepped forward, placed a firm hand on his son's shoulder, and whispered, "Abir, that's enough. You're hurting her." "But Papa—" "No," Zayan said, his voice deeper, thick with emotion. "You're not the only one hurting." Abir froze. So did Aisha. Zayan looked at her now. Really looked at her. His eyes weren't angry. They were broken, scared, hopeful, lost. And she realized he thought she froze because she didn't want him. Zayan turned slightly away, his voice low. "I'm sorry, Aisha. He doesn't understand boundaries yet. I tried to teach him, but—" Aisha cut him off softly. "Zayan, no." He stopped speaking. She took a trembling breath. "I froze because I didn't know how to respond without breaking either of your hearts." His brows furrowed. "What does that mean?" Aisha looked at Abir first, then at Zayan, then back at the tiny ring in her hand. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "I care about you both. More than I planned to. More than I should. But I'm scared. Because I don't know if I'm strong enough to fill a space that once belonged to someone you loved." Silence, deep, painful silence. Rain hit the windows harder, as if the world itself was listening. Zayan's throat tightened. "You're not replacing anyone," he whispered. "But it will still feel like I am," Aisha said softly. She looked down at the ring again, "and that terrifies me." Zayan took a slow step toward her. "Aisha." His voice wasn't commanding, or distant, or hesitant. It was, "Ros, when you froze tonight, I felt everything I've been hiding." Aisha swallowed. "What did you feel?" "Fear," he said honestly. "Fear that I'm falling for someone again. Fear that Abir is too. Fear that you'll walk away, and we'll lose something we didn't even get to have." Aisha's eyes filled. "And what do you want, Zayan?" He looked right into her soul. "I want a chance," he whispered. "With you. With us. If you want it too." The cafe seemed to disappear around them. Abir sniffled and reached up to touch her hand again. "Auntie." I don't need you to marry me now, he whispered. I just don't want to lose you. Aisha pulled him into her arms, this time without freezing, without hesitating. You won't lose me, she promised. Abir looked up through teary eyes. So, you'll stay? Aisha nodded slowly. Yes, sweetheart, I'll stay. Zayan exhaled shakily, as if releasing weeks of fear. Abir smiled through tears. Zayan smiled softly. And Aisha? She finally let her heart feel what it had been resisting. Abir gently placed the tiny ring in her palm again. Keep it, he whispered, for when you're ready. Aisha kissed his forehead. Zayan took one small step closer, enough for their hands to brush. Not a promise, not a confession, but a beginning built on innocence, a healing, trust, and a love that arrived unexpectedly. They walked out of the cafe that night, Abir holding Aisha's hand with one side and his, fathers with the other eared their three. Shadows merged under the streetlights. Not a perfect family, not yet, but something real, something beautiful, something worth fighting for. Sometimes, love doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes, it arrives through a child who simply wants a complete heart for himself and his parent, and sometimes, that's enough to change everything.